Today on Investigate TV Plus, A's, B's, and C's. They're the letter grades that for decades have defined education across the country. But do those letters make the grade when it comes to what students comprehend? I'm T. Chappelle.
And I'm Lee Zurich. We have an in-depth look at the movement aiming to revamp the system and why some feel it will help level the playing field.
We are always looking at ways that we can close those gaps.
Plus, the importance of health screenings, no matter your age or the reason.
When Dr. Skinner walked in, I knew, by the look on his face, that it was not good.
Families who faced a devastating diagnosis share their stories to show how early detection could save a life.
Because I want this for my daughter, especially.
And a calling at a young age led to a creative career.
Hello, welcome.
Meet the puppet master keeping a unique art form alive.
In-depth stories that inform and inspire. You're watching Investigate TV Plus. In classrooms across the country, a shift. Homework is history, as is the 100-point scale.
The goal, replacing traditional grading with a practice called equitable grading.
It can be executed differently, but aims to measure how well students understand material without penalties for missing or late work.
Joe Feldman, author of the book Grading for Equity, says his organization has partnered with hundreds of schools, districts, and universities nationwide to educate them on the practice.
Proponents of the approach say it helps eliminate bias and benefits students who may need support. But critics argue students can take advantage of the system.
Reporter Heather Graff has an in-depth look at both sides of the debate, starting with one school that's piloting the practice.
Good. So that's our last question in that section.
In this Stamford, Connecticut biology class, Sean Otterspore is teaching his students about animals.
They walk 1,000 miles.
But they won't be getting homework today or any day.
We do most of the work in class together in groups, sometimes individually and then collaborating after the fact.
It's part of West Hill High School's effort to incorporate a practice called equitable grading.
This goal of being more equitable is trying to find grading that is repeatable, bias resistant, and accurate to what the students know.
Why is that important?
Because grades are the symbols that we use to communicate with the students. So when we put that A or a B on a paper, we're trying to tell the student that they have reached a certain level of content knowledge, that they've reached a certain level of understanding. And what we have begun to realize, particularly after COVID, was that these symbols that we use with the students don't always communicate the full breadth of the knowledge of the students' understanding.
Otterspore is part of the school's grading committee and has been piloting the practice for the district since 2021. While equitable grading can be implemented in different ways, A's and F's are generally still awarded. But the grading scale often starts at 50%, meaning that's the lowest score that can be earned. In many cases, students are not penalized for missing work and get multiple opportunities to complete tests and assignments. Exams and essays make up the majority of the final grade.
In moving to more standards-based grading or mastery-based grading, what we're hoping to do is better represent what the student knows about the subject.
Otterspore says about 70% of teachers at his school have implemented equitable grading in some form.
We've managed to get the better part of 160 teachers to examine their grading practices and try something new.
18-year-old Jocelyn Morales Castellanos says it's taken off some pressure and allows her to focus more on enjoying classwork and studies.
If we have something wrong, he gave us the opportunity to make it again and try it again.
As for West Hill principal Michael Rinaldi, he says he was turned on to equitable grading after learning about a book called Grading for Equity.
I think it's fair. I think it's kind. I think it's important.
The publication was written by former educator Joe Feldman and contains a popular iteration of the practice. Feldman says schools that try it are seeing results.
What they found consistently is that the D and F rate that students get decreases, and that the rigor increases.
Feldman says he started his research about a decade ago because he saw a need.
Equitable grading levels the playing field because it doesn't disproportionately reward students for having resources and supports, and doesn't disproportionately punish students for not having those resources and supports. Ultimately, Every student is responsible to learn the material regardless of their circumstances. It's just we don't want those circumstances to inflate or deflate grades.
In Feldman's 2018 report in favor of the practice, he writes that nearly 2/3 of teachers surveyed believed their changes to grading significantly improved student learning. But not all educators are on board, and some say it can lead to grade inflation.
It's just the framed article of my letter to the editor.
Suzanne Damali is a mom and former public school teacher in the Baltimore area.
What are your thoughts on the practice of equitable grading?
I think that there may be very good intent behind the policy, but I think the actual practice has more negative consequences that outweigh that positive intent.
She says the district where she once worked adopted a no-zero policy in 2016, which is still encouraged today.
If the student didn't turn in work, that zero was replaced by an automatic 50%. So not only, for a student who wasn't doing work, they earned a grade that really they hadn't earned.
So as opinions on equitable grading differ, National Education Association President Becky Pringle says there's value in thoughtful conversation around the issue.
We are looking at how we can build equitable systems so that the inequities that have been built on race, that have been built on poverty, that have been built on ability, that we are always looking at ways that we can close those gaps.
But to her, it extends far beyond grading.
When we think about inequities in systems, we can't only think about grading. We can't only think about assessments. We can't only think about even mental health supports. We have to think about all of it together.
How is it helpful?
Back at West Hill High School, Otterspoor says he will continue to explore the benefits of an updated grading practice.
Do you think that equitable grading is the future?
I think an examination of grading is the future, and that looking at grades that represent student knowledge has always been the goal.
Because he believes children have a right to the best education possible.
And just because tradition exists to do grading a certain way doesn't necessarily mean that's the best. That's how we push education forward, by trying new things and listening to feedback.
As the conversation continues around equitable grading, research is also being done on traditional grading systems. A 2022 study in the American Journal of Pharmaceutical Education states grading practices should be revised because grades may not always accurately measure learning. They can have adverse effects on student motivation, and they are not a good form of feedback.
Still to come, catching a medical condition early can save lives.
We can treat it much easier and more cost-effective if we find it earlier.
But the test you get might not be the one you really need.
That didn't seem right or feel right, but I was like, you don't want it to be cancer, so okay.
One survivor's warning to all women.
But first, parents channel their grief to inspire change.
But he could hear my voice when I'd come in, he'd roll that head backwards.
How their fight could give some newborns critical help when it matters most.
I mean, he meant everything, and still does to this day,
You can watch Investigate TV Plus anytime, streaming online. Get the app for Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and Apple TV. They're free to download.
From adults to children, getting recommended screenings is one of the most important things you can do for your health.
The CDC says they can detect certain types of cancer, high blood pressure, diabetes, weak bones, or mental health condition.
Even as a newborn, before you leave the hospital, screenings are done with the prick of a heel. And each year, rare disorders and conditions are caught in more than 12,000 babies. But what tests are run depend on where you live.
A family in South Carolina lost their son to a rare genetic disease. Reporter Carrie Beal shows us how they're trying to help others get an earlier diagnosis.
This is just different places we've been.
Matt and Melissa Emery say the memories flood in.
Having to hold his head up right here.
When they look at pictures of their son, Dylan.
When I look at these two pictures right here, I see just happiness.
At first, their son appeared to be like any other child, smiling, turning his head.
But he could hear my voice when I'd come in, and he'd roll that head backwards.
But at about 4 months old, they noticed something.
Look right here, you see his hands how they balled up. And
He wasn't hitting those baby milestones.
He started crying a lot. We noticed he couldn't hold his head up straight. He never held a toy. Just some developmental delays.
it just seemed uncomfortable at times.
At first, doctors not finding anything wrong.
Have a seat. Glad you could come in today.
But after testing at the Greenwood Genetics Center,
When Dr. Skinner walked in, I knew, by the look on his face, that it was not good.
Dylan was diagnosed with Krabbe disease, an illness that can cause neurological impairment.
The clenching of the hands is very typical. And then as it progresses, a lot of times you lose vision and hearing.
And Dr. Stephen Skinner says it's often fatal shortly after birth unless it's diagnosed early.
Especially with Krabbe disease, the faster that you can diagnose a patient and initiate that treatment, the more beneficial the treatment's going to be. So it's a very prime example of a disorder that's really good use of newborn screening.
It's why the Emorys pushed for new legislation. In 2019, Dylan's Law was passed in South Carolina, which adds Krabbe disease to a list of over 50 genetic disorders that doctors should screen for when a baby is born.
First, the DHEC lab, the state lab that does the testing, has to make sure they have the right instruments. They might have to make sure they have the process of getting the samples in on machines and the testing validated, that they can do the testing and get the results back.
It took a few years to implement the law, and in May, the process to test for Krabbe disease was finally set up. It starts with DHEC in Columbia, and then further testing is done right here at the Greenwood Genetics Center.
If a family now with Dylan's Law, if a baby's diagnosed, they can have that option.
If a baby does test positive for Krabbe, doctors say the best treatment is a bone marrow transplant. It's not a cure, but could prolong the child's life. It's a ray of hope for another family.
I mean, he meant everything, and still does to this day,
Dr. Skinner says if an infant does test positive for Krabbe disease, they would need a bone marrow transplant within 30 days. That's because Krabbe disease is characterized by normal development in the first few months of the baby's life, followed by rapid severe neurological deterioration. In Greenville, South Carolina, I'm Carrie Beal.
All 50 states require newborn screenings, but the conditions they test for vary.
While a federal committee created a recommended list, each state decides for itself which screenings it can carry out. And our investigation discovered dozens of disparities in testing across the country.
And to learn more about the test being run in your state, just go to InvestigateTV.com and search newborn screenings.
Up next, a mission to empower and educate women about mammograms.
So more of the personalized approach based on your risk, your genetic makeup, your preferences.
An in-depth look at what puts nearly half of women at risk for breast cancer and the test that could save your life.
You can watch Investigate TV Plus anytime online. Just subscribe to our YouTube channel at Investigate TV. You can catch stories and full episodes. The CDC reports about 1 in 8 women in the U.S. will be diagnosed with breast cancer in her lifetime.
Mammograms continue to be the best tool for screening and detection, but experts say it might not always be enough. According to the FDA, nearly half of women in the U.S. have dense breast tissue, and that can impact a mammogram's results.
Reporter Gabriella Rusk has an in-depth look at how you or your loved one could be at risk.
When I look back at these pictures,
For Ashley, Inda,
it was so beautiful.
Photos bring back memories, both good and bad.
You see me here, this is me, but this is also me, and this is also part of my story.
At age 38, the wife and mother of 2 children,
And that's what it felt like in the moment.
was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer.
How many videos can I record of myself reading a story, or am I going to get to see them get married?
Through rounds of chemotherapy and radiation,
I never quit.
She fought back against the disease.
There were some really dark times in there.
Inda first noticed a lump on her breast a year before her diagnosis. She got a mammogram done right away.
They took a bunch of images.
At the time, doctors told her it was dense breast tissue.
That didn't seem right or feel right, but I was like, you don't want it to be cancer, so okay.
Because both cancer and dense breast tissue show up as white on a mammogram, cancer in women with dense breasts is much more difficult for a radiologist to detect.
One of the important factors is breast tissue density.
Dr. May Alizabi is the director of breast imaging at UW Hospital. She says MRI and breast ultrasounds are often better at detecting cancer in patients with dense breasts than mammograms.
Adding different other imaging tools to mammography can help and improve the chance of detecting breast cancers earlier in patients who have dense breast.
Dr. Alizabi says screening for cancer should not be a one-size-fits-all approach.
So more of the personalized approach based on your risk, your genetic makeup, your preferences. These are all information that we are looking more closely at.
Would you be able to pick out the cancer?
After a 2-year battle, Inda is no longer showing any signs of cancer. But she's sharing her story to make sure other women with dense breasts know a mammogram might not be enough.
We don't have a cure for cancer, but we can treat it much easier and more cost-effective if we find it earlier.
While your healthcare provider could suggest additional screenings, there's a chance your insurance might not cover it.
But there are efforts to help foot the bill at both the state and the federal level. 24 states have laws that mandate supplemental breast cancer screenings be covered for women who meet certain criteria.
If you are going to be doing a screening, such as a mammogram, it needs to be doing its job.
In 2023, the FDA mandated changes to the Mammography Quality Standards Act, which requires mammogram providers notify women if they have dense breast tissue. And even if you do not need additional screenings, you'll want to check with your insurance company to find out what's included in your plan.
The Affordable Care Act requires most insurance plans cover nearly 20 preventative screenings for adults and nearly 30 for children at no cost to you.
Up next, a colorful collection sparking visitors' imagination.
Doing a puppet like this is his skates really do work.
We'll go inside an unusual museum with a passion for puppetry.
I'm Viv Williams with a medical mythbuster moment. The myth: you can't get sunburned or sun damage through windows at home or in your car.
We get a lot of sun damage driving around, and I like to remind people that ultraviolet light, particularly ultraviolet light type A because it's the longer wavelength, passes through glass.
Dr. Don Davis says window tinting in both your car and home and detachable sunshades in your car can help protect your skin from damaging rays. But if you do choose to use sunshades in your car, make sure that they do not block the driver's view of the road. Should you wear sunscreen indoors? Davis recommends always wearing at least a moisturizer with an SPF of 15 or above. With this medical mythbuster, I'm Viv Williams.
From historical artifacts to scientific specimens and works of art, museums can hold all kinds of treasures. But in Oregon, there's a unique collection showcasing the world of puppetry.
Reporter Ayo Elise introduces us to the founder, inspiring visitors to use their imagination.
Doing a puppet like this is his skates really do work.
Arg! Hey, matey. How are ya?
Puppeteer Stephen Overton found his calling when he was just 9 years old.
When I moved to Germany, my mother bought these British puppets at the military store because she had 3 kids that were driving her crazy, and thought Puppet Club would be great for my kids. We hated the stories. She said, fine, write your own. We don't like the scenery. Fine. Here's the paint, here's the paper, here's the cardboard. Let's make our own. So we toured the military bases in Germany for 3 years.
That launched a decades-long career built alongside his late partner Martin Richmond. The puppeteer has lent his creativity to TV shows, movies, and produced a number of original live shows.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Portland Puppet Museum. I'm Ping Pong the Panda. Oh, I'm so embarrassed. Hey, stop that. Come on. Just say hi to them.
In 2011, the couple opened the Portland Puppet Museum in Selwood. Overton rotates displays throughout the year to showcase the 2,500-piece collection featuring puppets from around the world. And alongside the displays, the museum offers classes.
One of the best ones I have is Recycle. I have 300 stuffed animals, dolls, and action electronic figures. And people can, for 4 hours, tear them apart and rebuild them into a string puppet like this.
There are also live performances, including shows like the recent Haunted Cabaret for adults, and shows for families, including a popular annual tradition, the Nutcracker Cracked.
The story of Clara getting a special gift from her uncle as a kid's magical fantasy. She gets a hook latch rug from a garage sale, and Clara is not amused. Throws it in the snow, and everything why her and her little brother are decorating the tree in her house comes to life.
Overton hopes people walk away from their visits with a little joy and a new respect for the art form.
The one thing that people say is we've never seen them up close like this. And wow, there's a wide variety. There's such a variety of puppets, from simple Muppet style to electronic to battery operated to all of these kinds of things. And I want people to just take a sense of community and art and appreciation for people that try to bring joy in this planet.
How creative and cute, and to really have those puppets in one place where everyone can go and enjoy them.
In such just a mix of the types of puppets he has there. Such a great, I'd love to visit it one day.
Yeah.
All right, that's it for us on Investigate TV Plus. I'm Lee Zurich.
And I'm T. Chappelle. Thanks for watching.
Next time on Investigate TV Plus, firefighters face a hidden danger.
We know that there's much more to the hazards that firefighters experience than battling a fire.
An in-depth look at the #1 killer among firefighters and what's being done to save the lives of heroes.